Let's start off with a bit of history behind holograms to see how they came to what they are today. Originally, holograms were invented by Denis Gabor, who was a Hungarian scientist, and he invented them in 1947. He also received a Nobel Prize for Physics in 1971 because of it. Moving on to the next important advancement in holography was Leith and Upatnieks, who made the off-axis reference beam method, which is the one that is mostly used today. So this was very impactful in the history of the hologram. Moving closer to modern times, the next notable contribution was by Denisuk, who used Lippmann's photographic process to make reflection holograms to be viewed in color rather than only black and white. And the final big contribution was Benton, who developed the rainbow hologram, which is very important today. 1982 was the first year when companies started to make use of holograms for business purposes. So MasterCard and Visa both added holograms to their payment cards to fight against fraud. These two companies has started somewhat of a trend, as many companies back then and now still use holograms to combat counterfeiting and fraud. So now that I've given a basic understanding of the history of holograms and holography and the process that they went to get to where they are today, I'm going to be talking about modern holograms and what they are and how they work. You're already wondering, what is a hologram? So let me start right from the basics. Holography, or wavefront reconstruction, is a photographic technique that captures the light scattered from an object and then shows it as a 3D image. So this is used to create holograms. Holos for whole and gram for message. So this is also known as lensless photography. So a hologram is a photographic recording of an image. So it's also a 3D representation of an object. So it takes unrecognizable pattern of stripes and turns it into the 3D representation of the original object when it's illuminated by light. So this is a physical structure which diffracts light into an image. Diffract meaning when light passes through an object. Holograms can be seen without any sort of optic device, since it's not like 3D or anything like that. It can be seen by the naked eye. This is because they're not actual images and they are made by lights hitting off different surfaces. So these holograms can be distorted and unrecognizable when viewed under different light or improper conditions. There are a couple different types of holograms. One is the rainbow hologram. These types of holograms are mainly used for authentication and security purposes, so they would mainly be seen on MasterCards and Visa cards and so on. These are made to be viewed under regular light, and the image is created by using a vertical slit that removes vertical parallax. And vertical parallax is the effect when the position of an object differs based on where it's used from or at what angle it's looked at from. And finally, the reason it is called a rainbow hologram is due to the fact that when the viewer's perspective is moved vertically, the color of the image turns to the rainbow. So it goes from blue to red. Moving on with types of holograms, there are hybrid holograms. So the types of hybrid holograms are integral holograms, which can be made from a series of photographs of an object. The next type is holographic interferometry. This is not a very popular method by any means, and it's not very commonly used. But it is basically small changes on an object that can be measured by making two exposures on the changing object. And the virtual image is compared directly with the real object, and that's how it's created. Moving on, there is multi-channel holograms, which is changes in the angle of viewing light on the same hologram that can make different scenes observed. This is also not as commonly used. But the next one, computer-generated holograms, is a very commonly used type of hologram in recent times and will continue to be a very popular method. So this is when the hologram is designed by a computer when two of the elements are already predetermined. So now onto one of the main types of holograms, the transmission hologram. So this is a hologram made by splitting a laser light into an illumination beam and a reference beam. Then the illumination beam is projected on whatever the object may be, and the reference beam is projected on the photographic medium. This makes an interference pattern on the film itself. So the end result is a light field captured in a way similar to the photography process. And this is a very inexpensive and one of the most common methods of holograms. So for recording a transmission hologram, the object beam passes through the beam spreader and the light is reflected off a mirror onto the object. The object beam is then reflected onto the photographic plate and the reference beam is reflected off a mirror and shines on the photographic plate. The resultant wave is created by the object and the reference beam. The amplitude and phase of the resultant wave is recorded onto the photographic plate as an interference pattern. So now moving on to the reconstruction for how the image would actually show. So the reconstruction beam is used to illuminate the hologram and positioned at the exact same angle as a reference beam. This is very important. So this causes 3 beams of light to pass through the hologram. Main types of holograms. The reflection hologram. So this forms images by reflecting a beam of light off the surface of the hologram. And the one type of reflection hologram is a direct beam reflection hologram. And this is the easiest to make. Moving on to how it works. So the recording of the reflection hologram. The beam of light hits the beam splitter, which is a semi-reflecting plate that splits the beam into an object beam and a reference beam. The object beam and reference beam are then widened by an expanding lens and the light gets reflected off the object and a mirror and then projected onto the photographic plate. Then both beams meet at the photographic plate and make the interference pattern that record the amplitude and the phase of the wave. Now onto the reconstructing. So a reconstruction beam of light is used to reconstruct the object wavefront. The reconstruction beam is put at the same exact angle as the illuminating beam, and this is very important. And after that, the image will appear behind the hologram at the same position as the object, and there will give you a successful reflection hologram. That's all you need to know about what holograms are and how they work.